Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams. Glad you're with us. A group of teachers gathered to condemn comments by a college president who's been tapped by Governor Lee to work on education reform issues. This after a Nashville media outlet obtained hidden camera video of a conversation between Governor Lee and Dr. Larry Arnn of Hillsdale College. The state Democratic Party calls comments in that video egregious, quoting Arnn as saying teachers are trained in the dumbest parts of the dumbest colleges in the country. And, quote, we are going to try to demonstrate that you don't have to be an expert to educate a child because basically anybody can do it. Teachers who gathered in response say Arnn's description is insulting.
The idea that we are doing this because we can't do anything else or because we want to indoctrinate young people is just the most erroneous and fallacious I've ever heard in my life.
You may remember Hillsdale College being mentioned in Governor Lee's State of the State speech, formalizing a partnership with the Michigan College to expand civics education. Hillsdale also operates charter schools and offers a curriculum designed to run counter to what conservatives see as a liberalization of education. Speaking to reporters last week, Lee said Arnn's comments were aimed at left-wing activists, not Tennessee teachers. He cited his administration's support for teachers in the form of increased teacher pay and school funding. Meanwhile, State House Speaker Cameron Sexton tweeted, quote, having parents and grandparents as teachers, I know firsthand the dedication, the passion, and the abilities needed in the classroom. I will never agree with or support Mr. Arnn's comments. And he went on to write about Arnn, quote, he has insulted generations of teachers who have made a difference for countless students. We have successful Tennesseans today because teachers made a difference in their lives. All that brewing just before TCAP scores came in for school districts. WAT 6 on your side reporter Kristen Gallant spent time last week breaking down the numbers.
East Tennessee school systems are getting the first look at their results from TCAP testing for the 2021-2022 school year. Knox County saw the largest improvement in English language arts and math.
We're seeing a lot of improvement made, especially in the areas of English language arts. We saw all elementary, middle, and high scores go up across the board there. Math, we're seeing improvement there as well in all grades. But we're not quite back where we were prior to the pandemic and the effects of that.
However, in some grade levels, science and U.S. history numbers were unchanged or decreased.
Through summer learning camps and through things like extra tutoring, we're thinking that that's starting to take effect and have an effect on students' outcomes and making those a lot better.
Anderson County schools also had improvements in ELA and math despite a troubling first half of the year.
We had a lot of attendance issues early on. Second semester probably wasn't as bad, but so we were pleased that we improved on everything.
However, they aren't quite back to pre-pandemic level scores.
While I tell you, yes, we improved from last year, and we did, we are still not where we want to be. If I had to tell you, we want to go up in everything.
Both school systems say they have plans in place to continue to see all of these numbers continue to grow.
I would say overall, we're encouraged by the improvement.
Sitting down with the student and making just an attainable goal for those kids is very helpful.
And we do want to point out here, you'll find all the numbers at our website, WATE.com. We turn now to abortion and some police departments saying they will not focus on making arrests of people violating the state's trigger law set to take effect in mid-August. State Capitol reporter Chelsea Beimfohr asked Governor Lee who will be responsible for enforcing the new laws.
I would just say that it's really clear what the law is, and that will be that'll be what will be followed in the state.
Tennessee's trigger laws set to go into effect will criminalize performing abortions across the state. The only exception is for extreme cases where the procedure is necessary to prevent death or serious injury to a mother. Many in opposition fear this decision won't leave options for women who are victims of rape and incest, and that some women will take extreme and unhealthy measures to get access to an abortion. However, the Metro Nashville Police Department released a statement Tuesday that said they won't be focused on arresting healthcare providers who perform the procedure. They said in part, "We are not abortion police. We are focused on safety and quality of life in our city through community engagement, precision policing, and organizational excellence. There are other entities in government, particularly at the state level, that are more equipped to address issues such as this." When asked how the new laws will be enforced, Governor Bill Lee said he wasn't sure, and it could vary by county.
And I think that will have to be determined, and it may be different locally, and the state may weigh in on that, but that's clearly something that will have to be determined going forward.
Reporting from the state capitol, I'm Chelsea Beimfor.
Tennessee's laws will make performing an abortion a felony and subject doctors to a maximum of 15 years in prison. Mothers will not face penalties. Back here at home, Knoxville Mayor India Kincannon is restructuring her administration in an effort to better tackle the city's housing and economic development needs. A release from the mayor's office says these changes include appointing a new chief housing officer and a new chief economic development officer. We're told that Amy Brooks has been named to that new chief housing officer role. Brooks is currently the executive director for Knox County Planning. Harold Cannon has been named to the new chief economic development officer role. He is the current City of Knoxville engineering director. The city says Cannon and Brooks will both begin their new jobs in September. Now, the mayor says Stephanie Welch's decision to leave the city and Becky Wade's decision to retire are what opened up this opportunity to restructure her top leadership team. WAT6 on your side had the chance to talk with Welch after the mayor revealed her departure. She told our Elizabeth Kubel it was a very difficult and challenging decision to move back to New England.
There's sadness in leaving a community that I love, and gratitude for everything that Knoxville has done for me. I'm also really excited about being able to spend more time with my family and just about what's next.
It is a bittersweet season for Stephanie Welch as she prepares to close her chapter with the city of Knoxville. The deputy to the mayor and chief economic development officer just announced she will be moving closer to home.
I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to miss out on being able to spend quality time, particularly with my parents as they get to an age where they are slowing down and need help, and I want to be there for them.
You have seen Welch plenty of times before. In her 27 years in Knoxville, she has served as president of the Great Schools Partnership, community health director at the Knox County Health Department, and on city council.
I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the people who I've been able to develop relationships with and who I hope that I've been able to make a difference in people's lives.
Welch has a little more than 2 months until her departure, and there are things on her agenda to accomplish before then.
There are some specific projects that are important to me. We've been working for the past couple of years on a multi-use stadium. I think a lot of people are familiar with that, so I'm excited about that project. We've had to just slow it down a little bit to address some of the challenges in the supply chain and labor market, but the project is still moving forward. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work on the stadium, the multi-use stadium project, and get that to a point where it's ready to hand off to the next person.
Welch's last day is September 2nd. Mayor Kincannon praised Welch in a release from the city, writing, quote, "She gives 100% to everything she touches, and she will be missed. However, family must come first. I respect and support her decision." Still to come, we weren't on the air after the Supreme Court ruling on abortion came down, but we convened a special gathering of our Tennessee This Week pundits a few days later. Coming up, you'll hear their discussion about this landmark change. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams. We're joined right now by our panel of pundits, attorney Shelley Breeding. Great to have you here with us, Shelley. Healthcare analyst Craig Griffith and political analyst George Korda. Again, everybody, great to have you here with us. We're talking about the Supreme Court decision and then what this translates to here at home in Tennessee and in East Tennessee. So first of all, we'll start off with kind of a broad question, just kind of get your reaction. Do you agree, disagree? The U.S. Constitution guarantees a right to an abortion. Did the Supreme Court get this right? Did the Supreme Court overstep its boundaries? Craig, I'm going to let you start with the discussion.
Well, I don't think this should come as a surprise to anyone. not only did you have the leaked opinion that seemed to be the consensus of the court several months ago that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade, but it's the climax of probably a 40-year action plan by the the Heritage Foundation and conservative jurists to get the right people on the court to make that decision happy. And I think that, anyone that thinks that the 3 justices nominated by Trump to the court were going to do anything other than overturn Roe v. Wade is not having a good outlook on life. I think they were specifically put on the court to come to that conclusion. And you can see that things are going in a more conservative tilt on a number of other important issues, such as providing funds for religious schools, the New York gun decision, the last week's decision on reining in the authority of the EPA to set air pollution limits. So I think this is just the first step in what we will see this court change a lot of things. Whether it was the right thing, that's a personal judgment. I personally feel that decisions like this should be between a woman and her doctor. So I don't know that they got it right. But it's the most contentious issue that this country has faced for the last 5 decades. And it's not over yet. I think that we've come to a new prohibition in our country where states will have the authority to have abortions, some states won't, and you'll have people going around trying to find the services that they need.
Shelley, kind of go along with what Craig's saying here. What are your thoughts, especially as an attorney? It'd be interesting to see kind of your thought process here.
I mean, I think it's a chilling opinion. I'm sad for America. I absolutely agree with Craig that it's a very personal decision that should be made between a woman and her doctor. And the fact that we're now making this a criminal offense for doctors to provide an abortion and putting doctors in the decision-making of, is this really life-threatening or not? I just completely disagree with it. I think the majority of Americans disagree with it. As a lawyer, it concerns me. The last time I was on the show, we talked about gun rights, and I talked about it being a constitutionally protected right and how hard it is to pass laws to prohibit someone with guns. And when I was here, just a few weeks ago talking about that, the same was for abortion rights. And it's very difficult then to pass laws because it's a protected federal constitutional right. We now don't have that right. It's not been often in our history as a country that we have given people a constitutional right and then taken it away. So in my mind, we're stepping back 50 years on the progress that we've made. I think it puts into question a lot of other opinions that are based on the right to privacy, which will include the right to contraception. I definitely think gay marriage is on the chopping block with this court. I will be shocked if they do not overturn gay marriage as a protected constitutional right on the federal level. I think this court is really going to step back and take away more constitutional rights in the future.
And we're going to touch on that to see if this is just the start or not. George, I do want to get your thoughts on what the other two have been talking about. Just going to get your impressions.
My impression is that I was thinking about this today when the Supreme Court, in effect, affirmed Obamacare. The same people who want the heads of the Supreme Court justices today were praising the court. If you like an opinion, if you like a ruling, if you like a decision, they're geniuses. If you don't like it, they're monsters. And I think this vilification of the Supreme Court is going too far, way too far. I mean, we have people that are saying we have to protect democracy. We've got to stand up for democracy in our systems. And then we've got now, in the wake of this decision, people saying we need to tear down this court. We need to undo it. We need to expand it. We need to get rid of it. We need to put them on trial. So all of a sudden, the same people that were so interested in protecting democracy and protecting our system now want to dismantle the judicial side of the system because they don't like the ruling. Well, they might like the next one. And then what? And I don't think for a nanosecond that there was okay, we're going to put you on the court and you're going to decide this way, right? I don't believe that. And I tell you what, I think the Congress in the confirmation hearings does an extraordinary disservice to the entire country when they start asking Supreme Court nominees, how would you rule if? And the only answer they should ever give is, I'm not going to say. Because I don't have the case in front of me. I don't have the issues in front of me. I haven't heard the arguments. So it would be a lie if I were to tell you anything. But we're demanding it now from Supreme Court nominees. And that's a danger to the system. I agree with Barack Obama on this. Barack Obama said, after he got elected the second time, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here because I don't have the exact quote, you don't like a particular president or his policies, go out and win an election. But don't tear down what our predecessors spent 2 centuries building. That's not being faithful to what this country's about. And I think the Supreme Court made a decision that a lot of people don't like, but when Roe v. Wade was passed, a lot of people didn't like that one either. And there have been 50, 60 million abortions since then. So these things happen. The court sometimes changes precedent.
I'll tell you what.
Why do we have nomination hearings at all then?
Well, you can hear the judicial philosophy and you can examine the record. But when you start asking judges, if a case comes before you, how will you rule? That's not right. That's just wrong.
That question. I don't think they've answered that question before. They've asked them, what do you think about Roe v. Wade as precedent and those things, but they never answer a question that they say what you said they should say is that case is not before me. I can't state what I would rule on it because it's very fact specific as to what law is being challenged and where and on what basis. I don't think they answered it.
And that's why, Shelley, you got people on the left now that want to impeach and put on trial. I think it's Kavanaugh and Gorsuch saying they lied when they gave their confirmation hearings. But if you go back and look at it, they left themselves wiggle room. But there used to be this argument that there should be no litmus test for Supreme Court nominees. And that's completely gone out the window. Now there's a litmus test for virtually everything. And I just think that's a bad thing for the country.
I think their testimony was that they talked about the importance of precedent of Roe v. Wade that had been there for 50 years and that they couldn't imagine, overturning such a landmark case. And we see what has happened.
The law of the land for many years, and the Supreme Court overturned that. It happened.
Tell you what, guys, we're going to stop right there for a second. Hang on that thought there, Craig. We're going to take a moment. We got a break for a second. We'll be right back with more Tennessee This Week. We'll continue our discussion. Stay with us. Tennessee This Week, I'm Bo Williams. Again, we're joined by our panel of pundits. We're continuing our discussion on the latest decisions by the Supreme Court concerning abortion. And really now we're going to focus on how it applies here in the state of Tennessee. Of course, the Supreme Court calling on states to kind of draw that line, if you will, here in Tennessee. That line is going to be no abortions except to save the life of the mother or avoid debilitating injury. Is that the right spot? Others say, well, what about rape? What about incest? When we look at the weeks here, 6, 11. Has Tennessee got this right as far as what they are planning to do as far as putting this into play? Shelley, I'm going to start with you to kind of get your thoughts. Should it be different? Should more be added here or not?
I think there's going to be a lot of litigation. So right now there's 2 different laws. There is the heartbeat law that was passed in 2020. It was in litigation. There was an injunction that prohibited it from going into effect. That injunction has been lifted, and that is the law in Tennessee right now. So it prohibits abortions after 6 weeks or after a heartbeat is detected. In 30 days after the Roe opinion was struck down, there is the trigger law, which will go into effect. Right. And that will basically ban all abortions. It's not a 6-week mark. There's no mark. And as you said, the only exception is, an emergency life-threatening situation to the mother. I think attorneys are having lots of discussions about this right now. Under that, the abortion definition under that is anything after fertilization. So I think that's going to affect the morning after pill by definition. There's a lot of conversation about that and some contraceptives. Is it going to affect an IUD for women? The other thing is it also defines abortion as when you remove a dead fetus. So there's a lot of questions with doctors as to what's life-threatening on a DNC procedure for a mother if there's not a spontaneous abortion. I think a lot of doctors are questioning this because they're the ones who are at risk of criminal prosecution for a Class C felony. that's 3 to 15 years in jail. And then they have to go to trial and spend their own money to show that the abortion was needed for the woman as a life-threatening emergency opportunity.
So, George, I want you to follow up on this. I want to get your 2 cents here. I mean, is it cut and dry, or as you're hearing, it seems like there's a lot of question marks out there and a lot of answers that still need to be.
This actually has a parallel on the executive. No, I'm sorry, on the legislative branch of government. That is, when Congress passes a law, the law does not have in it every nuance, every aspect, every thing that may or may not happen. You get people going to work, putting rules together and analyzing what the intent of Congress was. And the federal government comes up with all these rules that people have to follow. Well, the Supreme Court has issued a decision returning this authority to the states. Now, what happens at this point is the states try to figure out, okay, to Shelley's point, what are all the various aspects of this? They pass a law, and then here's what's going to happen. As time passes, that law is either going to be supported by the people of Tennessee or opposed by the people of Tennessee, or there will be things that will be adjusted in it. There will be new things that are passed in it. And the way it looks today may not be the way it looks a year from now or the way it looks 5 years from now. So the process is continuous. It's continuously evolving. But I think the basic intent, and I have a suspicion, that's all it is, a suspicion, that when some of the laws around the country, these trigger laws were passed, that the legislatures didn't actually necessarily think that Roe v. Wade was going to go away. It's a little like the Berlin Wall. I was at the Berlin Wall. I spent time at the Berlin Wall. I didn't think in my lifetime it would be gone, but it did. And I think there may have been laws passed with the expectation that Roe v. Wade would never go away, but the laws were passed in order for legislators to take a position and be able to say, this is what I support. Well, now the laws are going to go into effect, and we'll see what the legislative reaction is to that once the responsibility actually is in their laps.
So, Craig, do you go along kind of what George and Shelley have been saying here? You have some agreements, disagreements. Also, because we're running out of time, I also kind of want you to touch on, if you can, is there more to come? Or is this it? Abortion, or, as Shelley was bringing up earlier, are we going to see some impacts when it affects, we're talking about revisiting gay marriage and other aspects. So real quick, kind of touch base on what George and Shelley have been saying, and then kind of transition, if you will, over to the what's next, or is there anything that's coming up next?
Well, I think we're in uncharted waters here right now. I might point out that the thing that Shelley was talking about doctors being charged with a Class C felony, they had to prove with a preponderance of the evidence that the abortion that they performed was legal. That's the same standard, Shelley, I believe, as any criminal murder charge. So, I think that it's going to be very difficult.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
I would say it is a different standard, but it's an affirmative defense, which means it's like self-defense, that you're charged with murder, you did a murder, but it's a defense to it. So they've committed the abortion. It's just a defense that they then have to prove, and no medical malpractice insurance is going to cover that. The physicians are going to have to pay for that themselves. I can't imagine that we're not going to lose OBGYNs over this bill.
So it's going to impact the way doctors treat their patients. There's no question about it. And how that's going to play out over time, how the issues related to, rape and incest and things like that, do they continue over time? And we'll just have to wait and see as it goes through the courts, as Roe v. Wade has gone through the courts. So, it's uncharted waters with a lot of legal territory to be covered. But in the end, I feel sorry for the women that have to make this very difficult decision under this new set of rules.
Shelley, real quick.
To answer your question, I think this court, you will see this court deciding to send more authority back to the states.
Okay. And Shelley, that's what I was going to ask you as well, because you've kind of touched on that too, kind of what George was just mentioning there. Do you think that's going to happen as well?
I absolutely think the court's going to send it back to the states, and I think it's going to further the divide between some of the red states and blue states. Okay. Absolutely.
We're going to become the ununited states of America.
I tell you what, and on that note, that's where we're going to stop. Guys, as always, we appreciate you taking time to spend with us and discuss these topics. And as always, we look forward to having you back again. We look forward to having you join us as well on Tennessee This Week. Again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Next Star Broadcasting.